coming to our show today. And today we're going to have a very special guest. And I can tell you this, make sure you get your pen and your sheet of paper because we're going to go over some stuff that most people don't want to talk about. We're going to talk about recruiting process. We're going to talk about what it's like to be a college coach. We're also going to talk about defense, not hitting, but defense. And on top of that, we're going to talk about base running. And for the people that don't know, this is episode 25. We have his name is Cody Dennis. He is a defense and base instructor based out of Columbus, Ohio. He was a former D1 and D2 assistant coach, recruiting coordinator with inspiration of coaching professionally. Yes, go Cody. Cody is the host of the very own Baseball Blueprint podcast. Man, I actually checked it out myself. It's pretty cool. Hey, Cody, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for that. Yeah, I had some previous stops at D3 Capital University and D2 Akron College last season, and had some experience playing at the Division I level with Youngstown State. So, yeah, I'm excited to be here, Coach. This is awesome.
That's good because you normally want to answer the question, so now you got to answer some questions. So,
Okay.
good. I got the first question we talked about before we came on the air. What was it like for you to go to JC instead of going straight to 4 year?
Oh man, I needed it. I was that guy who was undersized coming out of high school, and a lot of the times now down south, you're working with Division I junior colleges, which is a totally different world than a lot of D2s and D3s. Now, again, you've got your outliers there, right? But for me anyway, I needed that year of development. That was something that was super important for me. I felt like I was ready to go mentally. I felt like I was mature enough to step into that space. But you find out early in that space, a lot of guys aren't. And that's a great training ground and trying to figure out who you are. And for me, I went from, graduating at like 5'10", 140, to coming out of junior college at 6'1", 170, 175,
Right,
ready to go. And that gave me a great base to build off of as I worked into the Division I space. And from a competitive aspect too,
right.
you don't really get to endure that kind of experience very often. Usually the rosters set up a little differently at four-year programs. But when you roll into campus and it's like six guys stepping into shortstop, you know it's going to be a bloodbath. You kind of mentally have to prepare yourself for that. And I think junior college did a great job kind of guiding me in that competitive atmosphere. And development wise, like it just kind of gets you a kick in the butt. Like there's really not time to sleep, right? You've got to go.
That's right.
And so I had an incredible junior college coach in Steve Denneman and Mike Parr. Those guys were incredible, and then we were an incredible program too. We were regional contenders every year, several World Series appearances, draft picks. I mean, it was an incredible program. Sinclair, RIP. Those guys are now done, so we're hoping they come back. But it was an incredible program, and now those guys are off doing their own thing again. And Coach Denneman's at Northern Kentucky as the associate head coach there. So it was a blast, man. It definitely helped prepare me for the next step.
Well, I'm glad you said that because a lot of people do not like the JC word. So let's talk about development. That's something on one of my questions. So, can you define development for a high school player? What is development? Because they think it's an insult, Cody. Please educate them.
I'm telling you what, there's a reason there's development coaches at the professional level. Like this is a thing that doesn't stop, right? So I like to think of it like this. If you want to get as good as you can be, that gives you a chance, right? So when it comes to a development standpoint, we're always trying to find chinks in the armor. What can we do to kind of flesh out what gives us a disadvantage, make better what's already good, right? And so when it comes to development, you can simplify it by get better. Like that's what that means, and in the best way possible, right? If you've got a coach who's focused on development, and those are the best guys to me, guys who can focus on development and get you to a position where you can compete at a really, really high level, get the most out of you. That's a special environment. Now, when we think about development as younger players, and I'm guilty of this, right? We think of, oh, he doesn't think I'm good enough.
Right.
Right? And
Right.
in truth, that's not necessarily what's being said. Now, what we want to see as coaches is not that, no, I'm telling you you're not good enough here. I'm saying you have more in the tank. Let me get as much out of you as I can, right? And so as players, again, it's a maturity thing. It's a being in the atmosphere type thing. That's why those kids who have felt that at younger ages and working through the high school programs and good travel teams like the teams you work with,
Correct.
kind of get into that space and they're more ready. They're acclimated to that atmosphere already. They know how to take constructive criticism. To be honest, guys, if you're a player listening to this and you're not getting a ton of constructive criticism from your coach, might be a good time to worry, right? I think that's a situation where as you get older, you start to get really hungry for that. And now there's a point where you want too much feedback, and coaches are like, well, pull back, like let's build the confidence now. But that really those shouldn't be mutually exclusive. That confidence ride happens while you're developing, and I think the really good players and the really good coaches know there needs to be an adequate amount of failure in that development process to help guide that and build that player.
You're exactly right, which that leads me to the next question: development and growth. Let's talk about that word, the growth part, because people hate it. They don't like that word. They hate growth, because growth means you have to do something you're not used to doing to get better to where you need to be. And I said that because I'm a coach, you know that. And so explain to the listeners, why is development and growth so important for your progress to the next level?
Oh man, and speaking as a former recruiting coordinator, we're recruiting the person first. That's prime, because to be honest with you, at any level, it's really hard to find a high school kid who can step in and compete. The amount of, like you said, growth that needs to happen to have him be a functioning piece of what we're trying to do, oftentimes is so vast that you need a certain personality. You need a kid who meshes with your program. And so that growth is a necessity. And then when you're in the program, it's not just good enough. We talk about it a lot as coaches, but like, how do we get that kid ready to compete, able to play in our lineup?
Correct.
It doesn't stop there, though. If we want to be elite, right, what can we do to get the most out of that guy? That should be our question. It shouldn't be what can we do to get him in the lineup. It should be like how good can we get this guy, right? Like you see a team full of pros. Usually they're pretty good, right? So rarely do you see a situation, besides maybe some select Power 4 schools, where you're getting this entire roster of guys who can really do it at the professional level, right? And so as a player, it was always my aspiration to be like, okay, I'm going to work like a pro. I'm going to try to get to that space where I feel like I'm a professional, and then just climb the ladder, right? And so as you're working and as you're developing, that thought process of what's that next step? Like, you just climb up the rungs of the ladder.
Correct.
And then once you're there, next rung, right? And so you set these goals where you want to do your best to make these attainable, right? But it should be challenging. It should be a little bit uncomfortable. And a lot of guys, I was talking with Ryan Brownlee on my podcast, who's one of the directors at the ABCA. He had a fantastic point about the emphasis of changing environments and what we can do with our habits in that space. We've seen some incredible studies that show we can break habits easier in a new environment. Good or bad, right? So if you're moving to a new space, really hammer in on what you do good. If you want to make a change, it's a great time. Right? As opposed to that stagnation of staying in the same spot for a really long time. We want that uncomfortableness sometimes as athletes, because that leads us to some really great development moments.
Right. And it brings the best out of you, something you didn't even realize you had.
Exactly.
Which that brings me to the next question. So we talked about development, we talked about growth. Let's talk about mindset. Cody, listen, mindset, that's just like getting a guy. I trained a kid Friday. I was talking about this to one of the fathers, and he was like, I told him something. I said, yeah, you go 3 for 3 and you had 3 bloopers. And if you go 0 for 3 and you hit the ball hard and it was deep or a line shot, I actually like the 0 for 3. So, but he's like, no. I said, no, it's a mindset. So let's talk about mindset, because baseball, you're going to fail. Period. You're going to fail. The question is, are you going to get up and succeed from the last event that happened?
Wow. So
mindset.
So good. Yeah, so I think this is such an important topic to touch on, especially for those young players who are listening, because this is a killer at the higher levels. The athleticism starts to level out more, and the work effort, like, you see it start to blend. But the mindset during competition, during training, is such a separator. And my dad runs a mental performance company, and he does incredible stuff. He does leadership stuff with law enforcement groups as well. But I'd be remiss if I didn't touch on Ken Ravizza.
Go ahead.
So Ken Ravizza is a name who, if you've been in baseball, you've probably heard it once or twice. If you haven't read his book, Heads Up Baseball, or Heads Up Baseball 2.0, that's like my Bible. Like, this type of information that we're getting is so good. Just the power of neutral thinking, being able to work forward. And I think it does a really good job. A lot of mental performance coaches hammer the process, which is important. We should. Like, having our focus on getting better is the best way to get better. which leads to better results, right?
Right.
But
I'm with you.
when you can
Go ahead,
mesh
go ahead.
those two, when you can mesh those two of the process and then also saying the results do matter.
Right.
Unfortunately, they do, because that gets you to the next level. You've got to perform, right? If you're in a position where you're not performing and you're happy with that, that's probably not good either,
Right.
right? So how do we find a way that's healthy to say, you know what, let me focus on this results-based process
Right.
while also recognizing like I need to be able to like separate the two in my head, because you can't
Correct.
be so worried about the win and the loss in the moment. You have to be worried about doing your job.
Correct.
So there's a nice dance there that happens, and I think oftentimes you hear a lot of coaches, especially ones who and again I've done this too, that are starting out, where we hammer so much about trying to dive into this process and focus on these individual development pieces, which is great.
Hmm.
But we also start to negate a little bit of the competitive atmosphere. Like introducing both is so important, especially in training environments. What can you do to build both? And so when I look at the stuff that Ken Reviz has done,
Okay.
it's a process oriented guidance plan that leads into competitive nature, which is so good. And I think there's not a person who's able to better explain that I've met. And when it comes to just making the information more digestible, he's a
Right.
guy to where when you read it, or when you hear stuff that he's said, and he's since passed, but when you hear stuff that he said, it just clicks so immediately. And I was talking with Coach Corbin this past prospect camp that he had over the summer, and I had mentioned, hey, what was Ken Reviza like? And it was the highest compliment you could ever get from a guy. He said he was grandfatherly, like he kind of had that energy, and he said it was so patient, and like the way he spoke was everyone listened. And to hear someone like Coach Corbin say that about this guy is
That's great.
incredible.
Right.
And so that's a guy that if you're worried about overthinking, if you're worried about trying to stay focused as you execute a plan, please take a look at his work and what he's done. He's a guy I couldn't put enough praise on.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and give it a shout. Here is the book we're talking about, Heads Up Baseball.
Yes,
So
thank you.
for
Thank
all the
you.
listeners, you need to go check this out. It's on Audible as well, so you can download it. You can listen to it. For some people that say that I don't like to read, but hey, your ears, all you can do is listen. Which leads me to the next thing you talked about. You didn't even break. I'm gonna break some. We're gonna break some barriers. So how do you break these barriers? How do you stay focused? And that is mentorship. That's something that us men, we don't really like mentorship. We don't like no one telling us nothing. And that's just a fact, bottom line. But how important is mentorship when it comes to trying to get to the next level, Cody?
Oh man, I mean, you've heard it before, but I mean, relationships are so important, right? And that's really what this comes down to. And I think if you haven't gotten involved with the ABCA yet, as a young coach or a coach who's wanting to expand their knowledge base, that's a great organization to get involved with. For first timers, they have a rookie mentorship meeting where some of the older members are able to step in and kind of explain how this process works, right? They talk about different coaching positions. They talk about different levels, what it looks like. I mean, they talk about the convention that you're at and kind of how to navigate it. It's an incredible space, and they do a great deal of networking there. And so for me personally, especially with the podcast, being able to connect to guys at the ABCA has led to that, right? And so just trying to find ways to get in the same room as these guys who have incredible experience and incredible baseball minds, it makes you better.
Right.
And then it also questions and challenges some of the convictions that you might hold, right?
That's it.
And as baseball coaches, oftentimes we kind of get stuck in the same rut. And we think there's only one way to do it. There's not. There's no always or nevers in baseball. That's a Jerry Weinsteinism. But there's no always or nevers, right?
That's
and so
right.
being able to stay fluid with your instruction, with your concepts. Now you might not have standards for your group.
Correct.
You might have ideas of we're going to play aggressive, and that makes sense, and that should be there, right? But it's almost getting to the point now where a lot of the social media stuff that you see is you should always be doing this as a recruit, or you should always be doing this when you're recruiting kids. Like there's not really
One size fits
really
all.
one size fits all. That's so good, right? And so when you're a player and you talk about trying to craft your game and stuff like that, a lot of what we get can come from other players. right?
Right.
It's the same way as coaches, like
Right.
finding those mentors to help kind of navigate things. And hey, I had this come up, coach. What do you think happened here,
Right.
right? So finding those valuable voices that you can trust,
Correct.
um, is so massive. And I think as a guy trying to kind of play the game in this space and having a blast at it,
Correct.
it's one of those things where if I didn't have those mentors, there's no way I'd still be doing
Right.
this. You
Correct.
wouldn't be able to stay in.
Right. Right. And I think the bottom line, I believe, is humility comes before honor.
Yeah.
And that's a biblical term right there. You know, in order to be honored, you got to be have some humility to learn from
Yes.
someone, because you know, much is given, much is required. If you're trying to get to the next level, and you haven't been through anything, you're not gonna last. I guarantee you. In anything you do, I mean, which that leads me to the next important question I want to ask you is, you know, for the kids that you talked about the recruiting process. Let's talk about that just a little bit, because I've had quite a few guys that I coach at a very prestige high school. And we had quite a few guys get drafted, but this is something just happened recently, a couple of years ago. We had guys go through the certain process with the recruiting process, like you just said, and make the phone calls, but for some reason they fell short. I don't know if it was like they got burnt out or they got tired. I'm trying to keep them encouraged. I just what I'm asking you. I want to encourage them, because I have had, Cody, I don't know how many guys, I mean, with talent that can play.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in South Florida. There's not too many guys that can't play, but
Right.
for the ones that can play, it amazes me. We got guys that can throw 90 miles per hour from the outfield as a senior, and can hit the ball. They may need some development. They still need some growth, but they just totally stopped playing baseball.
Mm-hmm.
Just totally. But they went to all these travel games and all these tournaments. You
Yeah.
did all this for so long, and then all of a sudden you just stop. Well, I don't think I can play. How can you give me some encouraging words for some guys listening?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think you see that a lot too as levels start to climb, right? And I think we talk about the junior college level. You see that a lot there too, right?
Really?
Oh yeah, I mean you come in, you've got a whole new class of guys coming in with 20, 23, 24 guys to fill out your 50, 60 man roster. You got
Right.
one team playing. There's going to be some fizzle, right? And so when you see this kind of energy, I know early in my career for sure, especially the JUCO space, like I questioned the passion of those individuals.
Right. That's
Right.
it.
And I
That's it.
think that's dangerous.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's dangerous to do that because you don't know what factors are influencing their decision. You don't know how they operate. You don't know the background of a lot of these guys. So
Correct.
I think there are a couple things where my heart says if you really love this, you'll follow that path. Life tells me sometimes that's not always the case. Sometimes you get pulled in a different direction, right? God's got different
Right.
plans for you.
That's right. That's
So,
right.
so I think when you look at this and you see that happening, and you know what it's like. Like you can tell there are times where these kids love this game, and then the love fades for whatever reason, and it hurts your heart.
It does. I mean, and I said that because you said the key word. Because when I went to JUCO,
Mm-hmm.
I was just hungry for it. I mean, it was like I was bigger than hungry. I was starving.
Yeah.
I have to play because I'm going to college anyway. Because if I'm gonna go to college, I am not gonna be studying all day doing nothing anyway. So if I'm gonna go to school, and I can possibly get someone to pay a little bit of my, just even if it's just 10%, it doesn't matter. It does something to my ego to make me feel like, well, at least I'm wanted. Now I got to prove myself. And I said that because I can count on my hand quite a few guys that I've coached here in South Florida that guys can play. And even if they don't play D1, they can play JUCO, they can play D2, they can play NAI. But for some reason, something fell off. And and I started thinking about all the money they spent, all the time they spent. And then when I asked them that question, Cody, they can't give me an answer. So tell me why you're quitting. That's all I asked. Just tell me why. Well, I just don't want to play. And then I figured out you don't have the confidence to play at the next level because daddy's not there, or I'm just using this for an example.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be many other reasons, but I'm just saying that because your story is similar to my story. I mean, if I'm going to go to school anyway, Cody, I'm going to go play.
Yeah.
Even if I sit the bench for the first year, I'm going to go play. I'm going to be around the atmosphere and so forth. Go ahead.
That's so good. And I think that does come down to a little bit, and there are times where that happens where it's a mental game thing too. Right? We talk about that confidence and being able to thrive in that environment. And sometimes that comes from how you were nurtured as you grew.
Right.
Other
You're right.
times you can find that confidence in different places.
Right.
I think ultimately high performers find their confidence from their preparation, right? So if you feel prepared, if you feel like you're ready for that environment, it's really tough not to be excited for that, right?
Right.
There could be some fear there. There can be some anxiety. That's fine. That's
Yeah.
healthy. That's
Right.
normal.
Right. That's healthy. Yeah.
But going into that environment is it should be a fun thing, right? This is a game. Like you're
Right.
going into battle, but it's fun. Like this is
Correct.
why we do that. That
Correct.
we get in that environment, we get butterflies.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
And if it's not making you nervous, you shouldn't do it anymore. I mean, if you don't get nervous, I mean, it's natural to be nervous, but like you just said, I started thinking about it. You can only play baseball or basketball or football or whatever sport for so long anyway. And there's only so many going to be the top elite proficient players. And that's something you talked about in the beginning of the show. You talked about proficient. And it's interesting because the name of my podcast in my business called YouGoin'Pro. And my motto is this: to help athletes develop proficiency. I'm going to say it again: to help athletes develop proficiency and assist in their passion for the game they love. That's my motto. And it's like proficiency. People think, when I think you going pro, they think just being a professional baseball player. No, you're missing the whole concept. I'm trying to get you to develop as a proficient athlete so you can be successful in everything in life. You see what I'm saying?
yeah, that's so good, man. That's so
I
good.
mean, that's just something that's something that God's given me, and I'm so grateful. I said, man, you know what? Everybody thinks when I say pro, you going pro, they think, well, you're just gonna play pro. No, you missed the whole concept.
Yep.
And I appreciate that, man. But that leads me to the next wonderful question. So you talked about your coaching, when you play ball. So what do you suggest is good coaching and bad coaching from your experience?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I think a lot of it's player dependent, situation dependent. To try to ballpark that is tough, right?
Okay.
Now, I can talk about my experience, but not everyone's wired like me.
Correct.
For me, a good coach wasn't someone who needed to motivate because I was there already, like you had me.
Okay.
And so the knowledge of the content drove me to the trust of the coach, but there was never a hey, he needs a kick in the butt to go. Like my motor was running, I was ready to go. I was a high energy guy. So I think in the era of understanding that, right, a good coach is someone who is adjustable, right? I can't just teach in one way. I can't. There's too many different kinds of learners. There's too many different kinds of personalities. So to find a way to float communicatively is super important. And a good coach is just a good teacher. You know what I mean?
Right,
so
right.
you got to be able to convey the information well, and the content's got to be there. So with that understanding, right, the trust comes from the relationship first as a coach. So the good coaches have great relationships.
You're exactly
They
right.
just do. And I think when you're looking at young coaches, a lot of the times we want to prove ourselves.
Right.
So we just kind of spew content and say, hey, look at all this stuff that I have. It's very impressive. Have fun digesting all that.
That was good. I got to give you an amen on that one. That was really
Yeah.
good. I like that.
Well, again, I keep saying this, but guilty. Like I've been there. And so I think as you grow and you start to realize like, hey, I don't need to give him everything I got right now. Like it's
Right,
overwhelming. He might not be in a position where this actually plays for him even. So just having some feel, right?
Right.
A good mix of common sense and awareness to where you can kind of manage guys differently. And
right.
I think you got to be you still. Like play your
That's right.
personality. Well, I can't go and go be Coach Lowry, but I can go
That's
be
right.
Cody Dennis, right?
That's
and,
right.
and
That's
so
right.
I
That's
can
right.
do that and play the game with these guys where if this guy needs more of my energy to get going, that's
You're right.
fine. I'm not gonna hold that against the guy. That's how he's built. You know what I mean?
Correct. You're
They're
right.
playing at high levels here. The guys I work with anyway, I mean they're straight up dudes. But if that's how he's wired, he's more of a laid back guy, and I need to see more energy.
Right.
Like whatever motivates to kick that energy in, right? A lot of guys will have that kind of like laid back persona, and I just need to go tap on the like, hey, I need a little bit more here,
Right.
and then they're on, right? Other guys like they want volume, they want intensity, right? Which again, play with that, right? I don't think you lead with that. I don't think that's a great way to lead, but
That's right. Right. You're right.
I think it's really unique when you watch good coaches. The consistent factor amongst those guys are they have great relationships with their players. They're able to communicate the way they need to, right? If that relationship's kind of tarnished, you're not going to be able to get into a guy, right?
You're right.
But they also do a really, really good job teaching. They're just super communicators, and I think that's really what it comes down to is like, yes, the relationship has to be there. If you don't have the content and you can't communicate it, it's really tough to do your job right too.
You're right. I mean, it's interesting you said that because I believe great coaches are great teachers.
Yeah.
And great leaders, and they're adaptable, and they spend time trying to learn their players.
Yeah.
Because I've been coaching for 9 years, and I tell you what, the first year is not like the ninth year. It's not like the ninth year.
I,
It's nowhere close to the ninth year.
that's so
Because
good.
it's interesting you said that because I have one of my very favorite. I got like a top five players I love. And number one. He's probably number one. Well, number two, close to one and two. And he is a introvert,
Yeah.
a total introvert. He he doesn't seem like he's ever moved about anything. He very seldom gets excited. But I realized that he was his spirit was attracted to mine because I'm like a go getter. Like, listen, let's get it done. Let's
Yeah.
go. I'm always pumped. I wake up, I'm pumped. He's totally different than I am. And I used to think, man, this kid don't like me. What's up with this kid? I mean, what's
Yeah.
going on? Now this is back. We're talking about four years ago. I'm like, man, what's up with? I'm like, does he don't like me? What is it? Is it the way I look? And then all of a sudden, I kid you not, one day something happened. I don't know what it was. I had an accident, and he was the very first kid there on my side by my bed, and I had to be rushed to the hospital. And I was like, oh whoa! And then we just connected. It was like an automatic connection. So it's interesting you talked about that because there are a lot of kids you think that you got to have one way to do everything, and it's not that way. It's
Right.
not one. It's not one size fits all. It's not like basically coaching is like a Rubik's cube. If people know what a Rubik's cube is, you gotta twist it, turn it. You gotta figure it out as you go. It's an on-the-job training job, and I appreciate that. But which leads me to the next thing I want to talk to you about. You talked about you wanted to be a college coach. Is that still on your dream board?
Yeah, I mean, I've had experience at a couple different college levels, and I think that's definitely an option. I think professionally, I've had some professional interests as of late, and that's been really great too. Um, I think a lot of what you want to do, right, especially in this game, is super dependent on where you're at in life in terms of finances, when it comes to how your relationships are operating and stuff like that. I know for me, at least for the past couple years living in Florida, I got to taste a little bit of the professional side of the game. Got to go to a ton of FCL games and watch how those environments operated, and that was fantastic. And then obviously being involved with the ABCA and then getting to go watch like really high level college ball and watch those coaches in action is super fun. And I think there's just something great about being a part of the game, right? That's really what it comes down to. What can I do to stay in this game as long as I can? Because this is what I love to do. This is what I feed off of. And I think, like you said, it comes down to being a great teacher. And I think one of the things that I love to do is teach.
I do too.
Like when I'm not coaching, like if I'm in between jobs, I'm teaching. Like I'm finding somewhere where I can teach, right? And so I think that's one of the things where it does keep you sharp, but also it feeds that a little bit of like, hey, I need to be able to convey information. I want to make sure I'm getting information across to people. And I wish I could tell you where that comes from. I know my mom's a teacher, my grandparents are teachers, my dad teaches, so it comes from there. But I just mean like internally, like I don't know why that's a scratch I have to itch, but it is. And I think a lot of coaches are like that, where you kind of got to go. And we got guys coming in tomorrow. We got pro guys coming in tomorrow because they're in their off season, and we're gonna go work in at the facility. And they told me tonight, hey, we're gonna come in at 11:30. Like, yep, I'm there, dude. Like, let's go. And it's one of those things where I do like working with the high level guys too, because the amount of information that you can convey is more because they're higher level, because they're older, because they've been around the game longer. But it's almost not always necessary. So you really like that's where like if you want to test your mastery of being able to communicate, it's a great place to do it with those guys. And they let you know, hey, this is a little bit too much, or oh, that's really good. Can you give me some more? Like lead me there. And so those guys are so good at understanding how they learn too. That's why they're such high level players. But to be honest with you, I love having the 8-year-old I had for a lesson prior to practice tonight. Like he taught me a new way to work his hands back. I was throwing him a different way. He's like, yeah, my rec league coach did this with my hands. I started hitting the ball really hard. I'm like, oh, that's good. Let's do that. And so you just never know where the new information is going to come from. And there's a lot of great environments in the area now. And so I'm trying to soak in as much as I can, enjoy it, and I'm having a blast here.
I like what you just said. I want to give you some input. You said something, so I asked the question, so what are some things you can do? The first thing that I personally believe is you got to have some faith. If you
Yeah.
have faith, that's the very first thing. You got to have faith. And me personally, if this works for me, have faith in God. That's the first thing. Second thing, you talked about this, and I'm going to repeat what you said, was associations. You got to connect with the right people. And a lot of times people go on social media and they're looking, oh, he's got all these followers. No, 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 no. We're not talking about that. You need to you need to find guys that are in your line of work or your position that you want to be in, and you need to get under them and just grandfather under them and just stay under them. And you need to be a student. You got to learn how to shut up and listen. God gave you 2 ears. Use the ears more than the mouth. And I'm just saying that because I've learned that because it's taught me a lot. And I had some things happen to me, made me shut up. But now I'm pretty good. I just
Yeah.
I ain't got to be I don't have to be the loudest one in the group. I don't have to say a word. I can just sit back because my mind is going. I'm taking all this. I'm like a computer. I'm listening. I'm just listening. It's like, are you okay, Coach Lowry? Yeah, I'm cool. I'm real good. Like, you need to say anything? No, I don't need to say anything. And so I said that because you talked about the professionals.
Yeah.
I have quite a few good friends. One of them played for the Boston Red Sox, and which we know who number 24 is. And also, I had another guy that lives around here. His name is Pierre. He played for the Marlins. And also, I got another good friend, Todd Hollingsworth. And I'm saying that on the air because they have taught me something. Even though they're not playing anymore, but being around them, talking baseball, listening to them, because they know I coach. And I actually coached 2 of their kids in high school. So they have high respect for me because when you have an opportunity to coach Major League Baseball players' kids, they're looking at you, they're watching you, and they're waiting for you. And if they respect you, it goes back to association, have a little faith, and you just be who you are, and have ears to listen and know when to go, when, and have discernment. Put it that way. You got to know when to talk and when not to talk. So, I just want to throw that out there because that can help you, but it also reminds me.
For sure.
Because I want to get to the next level. I love coaching high school baseball, but
I'm in the ladder, right? I think you got to find where your passions lie, right? I think a lot of the level stuff, people talk about high level and low level coaches, and I'm not quite sure what that means, right? I think the only separators that I see are certain rules and regulations at certain levels, right? You're doing the same job. High school guys get less time with their coaches than Division III. Division III gets less time than Division II, and so on and so forth, right? So I think part of what kind of directs me where I'm going is like, how much time do I get with these guys? Like, am I gonna feel bad about saying, hey, it's a dead period now, like I can't work with you, because I don't. To be honest with you, I feel like that's wrong. You know what I mean? So as someone who's outside of the NCAA right now, like that was one of the tougher ways that we had to operate at the D3 level. At that time, it was 4 weeks. We had 4 weeks with our guys, which is tough, man. And so outside of that 4 weeks, like I wasn't able to instruct. I wasn't able to give feedback like that, and that made things difficult mentally as well, because I could see these guys getting after it, and they were hungry. And you want to be a part of that, and as coaches you are, but there's more distance, right? And I, to be honest with you, very rarely do the levels get enough time with their players at any spot that's professional or otherwise. But just to be an option, right? Being able to, when they need help, be able to be there, right? I think I love that accessibility of, hey, can you come throw BP? Yeah, dude. Like, I live for this. Yeah, just text me. I'll be there. Can you hit fungos? Yeah. Like, I'm ready. Let's go. So that idea of trying to climb the ladder is fine, but I think a lot of that climb the ladder mentality comes from, like, I want more time with these guys. I want more time doing what I love. That's really what I think drives that process. And really, I'm not so sure the level matters. If I'm being honest with you, I think what matters more is, like, am I happy doing what I'm doing? Am I fulfilled? Like, is this something where I feel like I'm being led, right? Is this the path that God's chosen for me, or am I kind of steering off, right? So I think a lot of what I'm doing now has been like, I want to make sure I'm happy, right? I want to make sure I'm happy. I want to make sure I'm getting better always. Like, that's for some reason. I think that's probably something my dad's instilled in me when I was growing up. But like, if I'm not getting better, I feel like I'm doing something wrong. Like
Right.
there's a constant need for some kind of information intake, um, a cleaner queue, something, right? I
Right.
need to be better as I grow. So that helps. And then um, just finding ways to make an impact. Like,
Correct.
what can I do to get this guy to the next level? Like,
Right.
okay, you're a double A guy, you're there, you're so close. What can I do to help? Is there any?
Right.
If I don't have any knowledge for you, let me flip you balls. Let me feed the
Right.
machine. Like, what can I do to be a part of your journey? Because this is I love the game too much not to want to be a part of that, right?
Right.
Like this game has given me so much, and it's been such a driving force for my passions as a human. I want
Right.
to be a part of that journey for someone else, and I think being in this space as a coach really allows you to do that.
Mm. Well, hey, Cody, I just want to send out a shout to you. I really want to say, hey, if you guys want to listen to Coach Cody Dennis, his podcast is called Baseball Blueprint Podcast. So he's on there. He's got a lot of good things on there. I'll ask you guys that are listening, check it out because I've already checked it out. So it's a very good show. He's got quite a bit of shows, and hey, I'm very excited for Coach Cody. I call him Coach Cody. Hey, because he's gonna get to the next level. But Cody, I got some more questions. What's up with the bow nose? Because you know, I don't know if you knew
Yeah,
this. I
yeah,
don't
the
know if you
bonus
know
thing.
this. I don't know if you know this, but I am a oh my. I was probably one of his first ever fans ever, Bo Nose. So what's the deal with this Bo Nose Academy?
That's so good. Yeah. So I work in Columbus at a place called Bo Jackson's Elite Sports. We've got a couple different locations across the Midwest, and so essentially, we operate through baseball, football, softball. We have track that comes in and runs in our track area for sprinting. We do team building events. I mean, it is a whole operation here. I'm on the baseball side. I give lessons. I float. We have travel organizations from 18U down to 7U.
Okay.
And so when those teams come in, I work with those teams on the weekends. I work from 8 to 5 on the weekends, kind of cycling through those teams and making sure they're getting good reps. And then in the summers, I'll bounce from team to team depending on what team needs certain focuses that week, right? So it has been a blast. The guys here, Neil Pakanick, who's operating the facility, and Brandon Zink, who's our baseball director, have been super gracious with me coming back from Florida. And my girlfriend had started up dental school at Ohio State University, so she's loving that. And then now that we're both getting settled in, being able to be a part of this has been incredible. And like I said, I'm just feeding the urge to teach and giving me the opportunity to do that. These guys have been awesome. So super grateful to them and the facility. And yeah, so part of our attire, I've got like 9 of these Bo Nose shirts. And usually the way my schedule is, like, I'm recording right before or right after, so I'm rocking it. But yeah, this place is incredible. It's awesome.
Well, that's good, man. Let's talk a little bit about base running. Something I never talk about on my shows ever. And I was a base runner because I ran a 6.460. So I was like a leadoff hitter or a last hitter. Personally, I like Cody. I like being a 6 hitter. I hated being a first hitter because I cannot take pitches. I can't take pitches. I'm going to just swing. If I see a fastball, if I see a hanging curveball, I'm swinging. So with that, let's talk about base running. So what are some of the things that give us 3 tips about base running that we can help the listeners?
Oh man, you don't want tips from me. I'm a good base stealing instructor, but how about this? I'll give you guys some names to go check out because there's
Go.
some guys who have so much more information, and have this readily available for you. The first name, Matt Tallarico. If you haven't looked into his stuff, his website's steelbases.com. He's a Yankees director of base stealing and speed development. Special human, and incredible content. Like,
Okay.
they're doing things that are so far advanced. If you look at, he's ran the minor league system for a while now. He's been promoted up as the director now with the Yankees. But incredible numbers being put up by this group, and it's just a more effective, aggressive way to play the game, a way to score more runs. And so working into that thought process, he coaches a lot of different styles. One of the tools I should say that get us implemented is the vault lead. So if you haven't looked into the vault lead, I'd check it out.
Okay.
Another person, Mike Roberts. So Mike was I think he was with the Pirates last year. He was the head coach at North Carolina University.
Okay.
And then he's bounced around a little bit. His son Brian played for the Orioles back in the day. But he's an incredible person as well. He's the one who really kind of turned that vault lead. They called it movement before action prior to vault. Got that a little bit more mainstream. Matt put a really good template together for it and found a way to
Cool.
operate an offense through it. But those guys are high level individuals who have a passion for the game and really great resources. So Mike's got a website. If you type in his name online, it pops up. And on social media, I believe it's just Mike Roberts. But
Mike Roberts. Okay.
super great humans, and they do incredible things on the base stealing side. I think just when it comes to base stealing, I could talk for hours on base stealing, but we're not gonna. It's too much. I'd bore myself. But I think a lot of what it comes down to is, like, again, that confidence. A lot of the times we under address that space, and so that leads to, when we want to be aggressive, not being able to execute with confidence. So understanding, how do we create training environments that aren't monotonous, I shouldn't say monotonous, that aren't boring,
Right.
because sometimes the monotony has to be there. You've got to drill, you've got to be able to know your footage, but how can we make that stimulating, right? So finding ways to have effective practice times, finding ways to effectively use techniques in game, and then from an execution standpoint, what can we find for the other team to use against them, right? And now we have so much data. I mean, the amount of data we had last year at Eckerd was incredible. We went from like 40 bags over the course of like a 50-game season to like 73 or something, at a much higher stolen base success rate. I think it was like from 70 to like 84, something wild. So we probably should have been more aggressive, but it was a lot, right? And so understanding when to be aggressive, how to play with leverage, how that's impacted by your pitching staff, how to create more deadly offenses, right? If you got a team that's hypermobile, you're going to see more fastballs in theory, right? So that leads to a higher slugging percentage.
Correct.
And then you get this nice kind of cyclical wheel where, as that slugging percentage rises, pitchers try to be more fine, and so then they start playing at the edges. That's more walks, which leads to more stolen bases, and you get this nice little like revolution of stolen bases, which I really like.
I do too.
And so finding ways to effectively do that's really important. So a lot of what we're doing now with our guys at Bo Jackson is implementing new school techniques and meshing that with old school techniques, and finding ways to let the players know when to do it themselves, right? Because a lot of the times the coaches will float. A lot of the times the players see something before the coaches do. We want to be able, as coaches, to trust these guys to make great decisions.
Right.
And yeah, a lot of our groups are younger, so sometimes we hold the hand a little bit more. But as we get into the high school space, we want to be able to take the guardrails off a little bit and let them run, right? So finding good opportunities, like, coach, you're a 6'4" runner, your steal time's a 3.10. Just guessing. We got a pitcher who's got a delivery time of like a 1.7. You're running. I don't care if he's popping a 1.8. You're on, right? And so it's just a math problem, right? So finding good times, like, okay, you're a 3.4 on your straight steal, your old school lead. Pitcher's a 1.3, catcher's a 2 flat. Doesn't play well for you.
Mm-mm.
But if we vault you and you hit your timing, you're at a 3.2 now,
Right.
just from testing. So we're going to test all that and know it prior. So maybe that's when we implement vault technique, right? So, or this he's got a deadly pickoff move, man. He's got a really good block move, so you're going to have to delay your jump a little bit, make sure he delivers. So that might curve our decision making as runners. We probably would have to be less aggressive, or maybe have a shorter lead, because that's going to impact our return time too.
That's right.
And so finding who's a threat on the mound, who's not, what kind of catchers have certain tendencies. Is this guy popping a 1.9, but he misses glove side every time, so the tag turns into like a 0.4 of a second tag?
Right.
All right, that 1.8 kind of turns into a 2.2 now, right? So finding different ways to play that numbers game is really important. And again, sometimes you can fall into the trap of like trying to figure out these numbers, and then you realize, oh, they're humans, they can make mistakes too. So there are times to take a shot when you might not have it, but meshing that with leverage and trying to figure that out is really fun. That's one of my passions. And then now that we have access to stolen base stuff on Baseball Savant through MLB, we're able to see like lead lanes, delivery times, pitcher values. Is the pitcher getting this ball to the plate in a good amount of time? Is this catcher delivering this in a good amount of time in the right location? Is really, really cool. You can pair that up and start to see, who's effective, who's not. And I like to pair that with the MLB film room and start to kind of dive into what organizations tend to take more risks and who don't.
Because if you do your notes, take your notes, you'll know exactly who's doing what if you pay attention. Which I got two more questions. One question is defense. Let's talk about defense just for a quick second. because in MLB and also high level college baseball, they really focus on the long ball a lot. We know that. That's
Yes.
sales. That's the big picture.
Hmm.
But we don't talk enough about defense. We already talked about base running. Let's talk about defense just for a quick second, because I know there's one catcher in the MLB played for Houston a couple years ago. His batting average is like 197. I don't remember
Yeah.
his name. You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, but he's a plus defender, right?
Exactly. So how can you better your game as a plus defender for the listeners?
Yeah,
In
I
your
think
opinion.
a lot of what you do on the field is determined by your ground coverage, right? I think at a certain level, uh, there's less separation on the routine plays. They tend to be made more often. That's why they're routine, right? And so we start to see that the ground coverage, being able to cover more ground on balls, starts to add a ton of value defensively, right? So we start to see that impacting the stakes that a defender's playing in terms of his depth and the angle across the field that they're playing. So if you look at defenses now, because of shift limitations at higher levels, you're not able to come across the bag. Now, in the college game, you can do what you want, which is a
Right.
ton of fun. You can do some really cool stuff. But we'll talk professionally here, where you're not able to cover across the bag as a left side defender or right side defender trying to shift on a righty, right?
Correct.
So, what can you do to maximize the ground coverage there? What are good positions to play? How do we pair that with the data we know of the hitter? Um, what does that data look like in comparison to what the pitcher brings to the table? If we got a guy who's pumping fuzz and a right-handed bat, maybe we don't shift as heavy pull side, right? So again, the tendencies will give us a little bit of idea like where to play guys, but I think if you want to be a better defender, a lot of it has to do with reading that initial hop, understanding when to attack, when to be patient, and then at least for me, like one of my sponsors is Valley Sporting Goods, and I think one of the things that I really hammer home with our guys that we've been working with here is pocket presentation,
Okay.
and that I don't think that should go underlooked here, because I think what we see is as we make that move, right? And here's one of our training gloves here. This is
Yeah, go
this is
ahead.
a really small one. This is the Eagle K47. So I use this exclusively for pick work, but you can use this for a lot of different things. But that pocket presentation saves you a lot of the time. With poor footwork, being able to hold posture through a play, cut down a hop that maybe you should have sat back on, but you're going to attack anyway, right? So it does bail you out. Having a good pocket solves a lot of problems. And then like isolating that pocket work and then addressing the feet second, right? Being able to do both is really really important. But I think it does start with being able to read hops. Like, are you able to initially see the launch angle and say, you know what, this ball's launched about where my eyes are and it's going to fade down. Maybe I don't need to attack up first step. Those balls
Right.
tend to be scalded, right? So I might create angles there. I might be a little bit more passive on my route as opposed to a really steep ball that's been chopped. I know that's something I'm going to attack, right? Let me
Right.
cut down the space, right? Space equals time in that game, right? So when we can create as much space and time as we can, if it's scalded, if it's not hit real hard, you got to cut that down. You got to be aggressive.
Well, hey, man, you have given out so much information. I hope that they get taking notes, because I tell them all the time when you listen to the You Going Pro podcast, please take notes. Which that leads me to the last two questions. I got two last questions. Now we're gonna go to, it's called the play of the day. This is called play of the day. Now you've played baseball, you've seen baseball, you coach baseball. I need you to give the audience, the listeners, give me a play that you have experienced or seen that no one knows about that you can share with the audience. It can be with you as well. With you as
Yeah.
well. A play of the day. This is your play of the day. It's your moment.
Wow, that's so good. Okay. One that I know no one knows about because no one was there really. We had an inter squad at junior college. I have a
Okay.
twin brother who's pitching. Um, we had I think it was either a tie and run or the other team was about to go ahead. He was at third. And I was playing shortstop. We had 2 outs. Ball gets chopped up the middle. We had an all turf field, so I hadn't been used to that. It was really bumpy. I didn't take a great route. I went in, had to kind of fade back towards right center. I caught it behind me. I spun and threw the guy out at first. And I remember thinking at the time, like, that was super sweet. I wish there were some scouts in the stands. And we come in, and our coach had said something like, that was a really cool play. And I remember after that, I was like, that might be the coolest play I ever make. Like, I was really happy about that. But one play that I hope no one remembers, we were at Mississippi State, and we were opening up their brand new stadium. They had a leadoff hitter named Jake Mangum, who was a stud, and their two-hole was a guy named Jordan Westbrook. He's playing for the Orioles now. He's their second baseman, but he was playing short for them.
Okay.
First ball of the game, one hopper from Mangum. I catch it clean. I go to look up, and he's like almost at the bag. I shoot it over. I throw him out. And I'm like, man, that guy flies. And the next guy comes up, big stocky guy, and this is Westberg. And he hit me a ball. It had to have been like 106. And it was just a rocket. And it was probably like maybe 8-9 feet in front of me. And it kind of just caught me in a middle hop. Like I should have drop stepped. I just didn't have time. It felt fast. And I go to body it up, and it hits me in the gut, takes the air out of me. Ball drops straight down. I'm like, oh, perfect. And I go to pick it up, and he's by the bag. And I'm like, these guys who hit rockets and they fly. I was like, all of them. No, that was a great team, man. But I hope listeners forget what I just said there. But I hope there's no video evidence of that, because not one of my better moments.
Oh, that's okay, Cody. That's why it's called Play of the Day. That's why it's called Play of the Day. I mean, and people don't get to hear this unless it's on my exclusive.
Yeah.
You know, but that's why it's called Play of the Day. I kept my jaws are hurting from laughing.
Sorry, man.
I'm sorry, Cody. So, is there anything you want to give out to the audience as far as a shout or some encouraging words before we close out?
Yeah, listen, I'm so happy that Coach has allowed me to come on here and speak. This has been a blast. And I know if you're a young coach listening or a young player listening, and you connected with what we talked about earlier when it comes to like holding on to that passion for the game and being able to continue to have that fire.
Right.
Remember, God's gonna push you on the right path.
Amen.
This isn't something you have to force, right? Mm-hmm. Fall in love with this. Like, your internal environment's going to get created by this game, right? And if it's something you love, hunt it. Go do what you want to do. And if that opportunity hasn't came for you yet, work while you wait.
That's right.
Because we know that preparation is the source of that confidence when we get into this space. So get on the grind, right? Get better. Get better while you go. And that's not me telling you you're not good enough. That means you get better. That way when you get there, you're better than the rest, right? So if you can, work while you wait and continue to get after it, because I'm telling you, there's going to be a shot down the road. There's going to be a shot for you, and you need to be ready when it comes.
Wow. Hey, man, you just said the word. You said Bible. You said Matthew 7:7. Ask, seek, and knock. Ask, seek, and knock. Keep knocking, keep asking, and keep believing, man. I appreciate that, man. But I got one last question. But before I give the question, give out a shout to the information so people can connect you with your
yeah.
Page.
Good call. So social media links. I've got a Twitter, Instagram. I got a YouTube page. All those are under the name Baseball Blueprint. I have a podcast called the Baseball Blueprint Podcast that Coach mentioned earlier. That's on the Baseball Blue Book Network. If you haven't yet, check out their app. It's free. It'll connect you to coaches, players, trainers, travel organizations like Coach Lowry. So you'll be able to access that information there. And then Valley Sporting Goods, if you're looking for discounts on their training equipment, that'll be a part of our link tree on my social media accounts. So thank you so much, guys, for being able to check that stuff out. I do appreciate it.
Hey, great job. Hey, this is it. Hey, we got post game. You know how after every game you ever had that post game talk with your coach? Now this is called post game. Now this is something that we do at YouGoin'Pro. Post game. So think about, have an open mind. I'm about to ask this question, then I'm gonna close out. Now, just think about what I'm gonna say. Now, you got 30 minutes, Cody. 30 minutes. That's all you get. Dead or alive, which player you would like to play with or talk to, and you only have 30 minutes, and why, and explain why. It starts now.
Ooh, okay.
30.
Okay, so I'm a history major, so I'm gonna solve this problem for the rest of the baseball historians, because I know you guys want to know too. I'm gonna have Joe Jackson step up. I'm gonna ask him, did you do it? I'm gonna ask him how it happened. For the 1919 World Series scandal. For those of you who don't know, go look at it. It was really cool. There's a couple movies made about it. We need to know. So I'll ask him about that. I'll ask him about, did he really stare into a candle to improve his hitting? Because now we know that kills your eyesight. I would also ask him, because he owned a liquor store as he continued to live after baseball, ask him if any of his old players would ever show up at the liquor store and talk to him.
Oh my God.
And then, there's got to be something else. Oh, and so he used to play for a factory baseball team before he got picked up for the minor league teams for the White Sox. If he was the best player on those teams, and if not, who was, and why didn't he play at a higher level? That's all I got.
I love it. Hey, this has been a blast, brother. This has been a blast. which I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna close out, man. This has been really good, bro. You did
Thanks, man.
good. I mean, you normally give out the questions, but you did a very good job. I'm proud
Well,
of you.
I appreciate that, Coach.
Amen.
I
Amen.
appreciate it.
You did good, man. Amen. God has blessed you. I mean, you're going the right path, and you said some very key component things about humility. You talked about preservation. You talk about faith, even though people don't realize, but you're talking about faith, really going through stuff when you don't even know there's an end to it, but it is an end to it. And also, you talked about purpose. You know, there's a purpose in the plan and everything you do. Because God has you if you trust and believe. But which leads me to the last thing. I'm asking my listeners that listen to the show every week, Cody. I ask them one question: Where are you leading? Where are you being led? Where are you being led? We go down the highway every day. We go down I-95, I-75, I-20, wherever highway. We're going north, south, east, or west. My question is, from listening to Cody today, given all this fruitful, blessed information, where are you going to be led? Where are you being led? What do you mean, Coach? What do you mean? I'm glad you asked that question. The L stands for listen. Are you listening to what Coach Cody had just said today? If you're listening, you should also think, when I'm listening, I'm applying faith, because faith comes by hearing. And then if you're listening, which leads me to the next question, what is the next letter? E. It stands for execute. Execute everything that Coach Cody has just talked about, and I guarantee you God won't let you go, and you should be able to dominate. LED. This is Coach Larry, the very own Cody Dennis. Check out his podcast. Check out everything he has, because, hey, he is a treat. He has given us all this fruitful information. He has blessed us. Check out Baseball Blueprint Podcast, and also anything you may have to hit him up. Hey, we love you. You've been a blessing, brother. God bless you. Thank you. I'm out. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome, brother. Take care. Bye-bye.